Greetings to you viewers and my fellow Final Fantasy fans. This is Final Fantasy Fan 12 and welcome back to Season 1 of Final Fantasy Rules. Still going over the classes, and now this time we are covering the Monk class. Monks throughout the Final Fantasy series are purely physical fighters as they have massive physical stats and opt to use martial arts in combat, as a lot of their abilities revolve around that. And since the Super Famicom era, their abilities consist of Kick, which is an AoE attack, Chakra, sometimes named Mantra, which is a healing ability which works a bit similarly to Heal 2, but can also remove Blind and Poison, Focus, which boosts their attack, and Counter, which is an automatic attack that happens after they specifically have been attacked by the enemy. In terms of weapons and armor, monks mainly wear lighter clothing and can never wear heavy armor in order to stay agile in combat. And their weaponry mainly consists of knuckles or claws, but would resort to using their bare fists otherwise. In terms of overall looks, monks generally would wear lighter clothing such as gis, robes, or tank tops in order to stay agile in combat, and sometimes they'll either wear combat gloves or just be barehanded. And in terms of overall appearances, monks are pretty consistent in overall appearances throughout the series. And although originally named as a black belt in the original Famicom release and wasn't named as the Monk until 2001 with the WonderSwan port of the game, the Monk has made its very first appearance in the original Final Fantasy. And although it is really powerful barehanded and again usually wearing lighter clothing, they can actually use nunchucks and stabs as their primary weapons. And after retrieving the rat's tail to Bahamut in the Castle of Ordeals, the monk later becomes the Grand Master. In Final Fantasy II, we have a pretty subtle allusion to the monk in that of Joseph, who fights using with his bare fists and having really massive physical stats including strength, HP, stamina, and agility. In Final Fantasy III, the monk is obtained at the very beginning of the game after saving the Wind Crystal, and a stronger version of the monk called the Black Belt is obtained after saving the Water Crystal in the Cave of Tides in the Famicom, as well as the Pixel Remaster versions of the game. And curiously enough, the Black Belt class is obtained after saving the Earth Crystal in the Ancient's Maze in the DS remake of the game. In Final Fantasy IV, we have our very first character that is actually a monk, in that of Yang Fang Leiden, or Layden, actually. Yeah. And his abilities in Final Fantasy IV and in the sequels Final Fantasy IV Interlude and Final Fantasy IV The After Years, his abilities consist of Focus, Kick, which made its very first debut here, which would be the main abilities for the monk throughout the series, and with the addition of Brace, which is his main ability. And a lot of Yang's abilities, Focus, and Kick, made their appearance in Final Fantasy V, which is obtained after the Wind Crystal has been shattered. And in Final Fantasy VI, since Final Fantasy VI, there are 3 monks in the Final Fantasy franchise that would integrate more interactive mechanics that delve and showcase their combat prowess by creating a combo, due to being influenced by the rise of fighting games in the mid-90s. And in Final Fantasy VI, we had Sabin Rene Figaro in Final Fantasy VI, the next is Tifa Lockhart in Final Fantasy VII, and finally Zell from Final Fantasy VIII. And in Final Fantasy IX, we have a combination of the monk as well as the ninja, in that of Amarant Coral. In Final Fantasy X, we have another allusion to the monk, and although he uses a blitzball as a main weapon, we have that of Wakka, as he is a very physical fighter. In Final Fantasy XI, the monk class is one of the 6 classes available to the player at the beginning of the game, and some beastmen in Final Fantasy XI are classified as monks. In Final Fantasy XII, monks are people who are born under the Virgo sign in that universe. In Final Fantasy XIII, the monk character exists of Snow Villers, who utilizes his bare hands in combat. In Final Fantasy XIV, if the player starts off as a pugilist, you start off as a pugilist at level 1 before becoming a monk at level 30. In fact, many of Final Fantasy XIV's important characters, or most of Final Fantasy XIV's important characters anyway, such as Wintergeld Beak and Yida or Lise Hex, are actually monks, even though Lise is actually a pugilist. In Final Fantasy 16, we actually, and yes, I said 16 because we haven't had that in Final Fantasy 15, surprisingly, but Final Fantasy 16 actually has a monk character, even though he's more of a brawler, as he does fight with his bare hands, which actually exists in one of the game's major villains, Hugo Kupka, who is the dominant 2 Titan. In Final Fantasy Tactics, the monk class, or the monk job actually, the monk job would be obtained after, or actually would be unlocked after the player upgrades the knight job. In Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, the monk has made a rather unorthodox appearance as being called the white monk, as it is basically the monk class with elements of a white mage, and it is a very exclusive, and it is an exclusive class to the Brigade race, and a lot of that is carried over in the sequel, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance 2. And finally, in Final Fantasy Type 0, we have another monk character in that of 8. And that about does it for the monk class. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like what you saw, click like, subscribe, and share with your family and friends, and make sure you ring that notification bell. That way you get notified of our latest videos. And do tune in for the next episode of Final Fantasy Rules, as I will be covering the Thief class. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching. This is Final Fantasy Fan 12 signing off, and remember, may the light forever shine upon us.